Hello and welcome back to Secondhand Overland. I'm your host, Matt Kester. Today we're going to be talking about this guy. This is the Retevis RB26 GMRS radio. Now, before you guys start getting all crazy in the comments, this is a GMRS radio. It does require the user to be GMRS licensed. If you'd like to learn more about how to get GMRS license, go watch somebody else's channel because I haven't done a video on that yet. Moving on. Retevis sent this out to us, oh God, I think it's been probably 3-4 months now. I am been backed up and busy with a whole bunch of other things. I'm making excuses, but suffice it to say, I haven't made the review video that I promised them I would make, and well, it's coming due. They sent us this at the same time that they sent me my other one that I really like, and that's the RT76P. This is, as you can see, quite a bit smaller, different form factor. It's also a little less powerful. It only registers at 3 watts. What makes this thing unique is that this is the lowest priced repeater capable GMRS radio that Retevis sells on their website. And it's around $38 currently. They have a list price much higher, but they're almost always on sale. If you're thinking about this as your first radio though, I'd caution you against it. And I'll tell you why in a minute, but right now I'm gonna just get into a few things that I do like about this radio and what I like it for. It's simple. There's nothing on the front or on the sides really other than you have a volume knob here, and when it turns on you get voice navigation. And really the only thing that a user can adjust on this is the volume.
1T6, 1T5, 1T4, 1T3, 1T4, 1T5.
And the channels. Channel selectors are right here on the sides, and your push to talk button is right here. Other than that, this is just a basic radio. This is like any business radio you'd get somewhere where someone just programs it in, locks it into a certain set of channels, and the end user has no say as far as what other channels outside of that they can monitor and or transmit on. This has really found its use as being the radio that when we go out on a trip, I put in the computer and I program, or even here at home, I leave program to the 3 or 4 repeaters that we have locally that we use quite frequently. And I have the simplex set to a certain channel with a certain tone that I pretty much keep all of my radios set to, so that when we go out as a group or with groups or as a family, we all know to go to that channel. Everything's already set up. There's no issues. And that's what I like this thing for, is that I can take this radio and hand it to someone who's never had any experience with a radio like this, like a child or a spouse or whoever.
How the hell do we use this thing? Breaker. Yeah, you hear me?
Sure thing, Rubber Ducky. Looks like we got us a convoy.
Woohoo! Cue the banjo music.
Yes.
And just say, hey, keep it on channel 22 or 23 or 24 or 12 or whatever. Keep it on that channel and you're good to go. It makes it very, very simple. There's nothing that they can bump or misadjust. They just leave it on that channel, talk like normal. It's just a normal radio. Hey, how you doing? Blah, 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 blah. Hey, I'm good. People who show up to like a trail ride or whatever else that need a radio, this is a good option. It's also a 3-watt radio, which makes it, well, double the power of this. While this can be adjusted, it also can get confusing, and you have all sorts of buttons here that can get really wonky, and the power is not as good. And you start hitting buttons and you get lost, and then next thing you know, your radio's on a different channel, different set of frequencies, whatever. You're trying to get a hold of someone and they're not monitoring because they're either listening to the weather channel, or they're on another channel or a completely other set of tones, or they've just gotten sick of listening to the weather channel and turned it off, and now you can't get a hold of them. That's why I prefer something like this to hand to somebody who's never really had an experience with radio, and just say, keep it on channel, whatever, and you're good to go. To me, that's the purpose of this radio. It is a more compact form factor. You'll see that the length overall, because of this shorty antenna, makes it a shorter length. It's a little bit thinner than something like the RT76P. It's also got, well, it's got a pretty big battery. That is a 2000 milliamp hour battery. The RT76P, by contrast, which is one of my more favorite radios that I have from Retevis, well, it's only got a 1400 milliamp hour battery, which means, being that it's pushing a screen every time and lighting up LEDs, and it's 5 watts, this thing's gonna have quite a lot longer battery, so you can really count on just somebody who has it keeping it on the whole time they're with you, not having a problem. That being said, I'm not a fan of it for any other reason than that. When I go out on an adventure and I go hiking myself, I want to be able to go through and change some features. Case in point, this radio, I can go through and I can change the CTCSS or the DCS tones, no problem, right here on the radio. So if I'm in a different area or I need to start using a different set of repeaters, or if I change groups or whatever, I can change all of the programming on this radio from this radio. Can't do that with this. This requires me to have a computer. For a long backcountry adventure, this isn't the radio that I'm gonna choose for myself, and it isn't gonna be a radio that I recommend to someone as their first one and only radio, because it is beholden to that computer to program it. That being said, it also doesn't come with the programming cable. That's another $15 purchase on top of it. So when you couple that with the actual price of the radio, you're already into the range of one of these other radios that doesn't require a cable for full programming functionality. If I'm doing it, and it's my one and only radio, I would spend $15 more and get a fully programmable radio from the radio, but then also go ahead and spend another $15 and buy that cable, so I have the ability to program it from the computer. Now, programming is fairly simple and straightforward. Retevis does offer some of their own proprietary software to use this. You can also use this radio with Chirp. At first, I was more into using Chirp for it, but after having used Retevis' software for it and seeing how pretty simple it is, it's not bad, and I'll continue to use it. You know, this is something that I take with me when I go on a trip. I program it to repeaters near where I'm going to be and with the correct channels and CTCSS, DCS tones for whatever group I'm going to be traveling with. That way, if somebody's radio goes down or somebody just doesn't have a radio when they show up, there's one to give them. It's very simple and straightforward, and they're not going to screw it up. Some other things that keep me from really recommending this as your one and only radio is the stubby antenna. I'm pretty sure that this stubby antenna is fixed. You cannot change it. I don't see anywhere to unscrew it or unbolt it, and twisting on it feels like I'm gonna break it. This shorty antenna, it's just not gonna pick up as much as something with a longer antenna. So I found it numerous times where I can turn this on, set it side by side with another one of my handhelds that has a longer antenna, and the other handheld will pick up all of the conversation from the repeater, whereas this one just kind of crackles in and out because it's not receiving the full strength enough to punch it through the squelch. Also, it's 3 watts, so it's not as powerful as my other handhelds that have 5 watts. And when you're out in the far reaches of civilization, those extra 2 watts can make a difference punching through foliage or whatever else to get that signal to the repeater or to get out and talk to someone. So like I said, it's not gonna be my backcountry go-to. This is the radio that I hand my kid or my wife or another person in the group who doesn't have a lot of radio experience that just needs something to talk on. That's my take on this radio. That's what it's good for, and that's what its limitations are. It does feature USB-C charging. It also does come with a charging cradle that I have long since lost. In fact, I never really used it anyway. I just preferred plugging a USB-C cable into it straight away. It makes it nice if you're traveling. You get something like a portable battery pack to just reach over and charge this with. It's very simple. And like I've said before in other videos, most people now who have a smartphone that isn't an iPhone are probably using a USB-C plug, which makes it very simple to plug into. We've got a lot of use out of it. But every bit of use we've gotten out of this radio has been essentially as the radio that I throw to my son or my wife when we're out wheeling and they need an extra radio, or somebody who's joining the group who doesn't have a big radio mounted in their vehicle and just needs to be able to communicate and have something effective that communicates simple. Because when you stack it up and look back, and we did a range test video with this, comparing it to a Midland X-Talker 51, this thing killed it, and that was due in part to that 3-watt boost in power. But like beyond that, I wouldn't buy it. after having used other stuff, I would buy this if I was gonna outfit like the family or whatever, and you wanted them all to have the same thing. And I mean, it does, it's got a big battery, it's got a decent form factor. But to me, this is a simplex talker, or this is something that you program to your own repeater or a local area repeater, and you're not traveling, you're not moving out of that area. That works, but for my purposes, I'm gonna have to pass on it. Well, I shouldn't say I'm gonna have to pass, but I just don't think that this is the first radio. This is, like I said, this is the second or third radio that you have, and this is the radio that you use as your loaner, or this is the radio that if you want to go jogging or hiking in the neighborhood, or you aren't leaving your normal area, it's okay for that. But I would prefer all that programming functionality, and this radio just doesn't have that. And that's why I'm going to tell you, don't buy this if you're in the market for your first radio. This is your second or your third radio. It's not your first. Now, you want to hear how it sounds? Well, let me go outside and we'll go hit it off of a repeater about 30 miles away. And to make sure that we get the best signal reception quality, I'm gonna load this up to Zillow, because the repeater we're going to use is a linked repeater. With it being linked to the internet, the reception that you're gonna hear here is gonna be exactly as it comes across to that repeater 30 miles away, not having to take into account a signal coming back from that repeater and having to hit our radio here and having variables introduced there that may or may not make the signal better or worse. Let's go out there and see how it works. I'll leave this set up right here. So way off yonder over there is the town of Crown King, and on top of Crown King is the Tower 600 repeater, and we're gonna key that up, and when we do, it should register back there on my phone on Zillow, because it is linked into Zillow. So let's try it out. WRKX 996 repeater check.
WRKX 996, repeater check.
Okay, so it came through and we were able to hear it clearly from that repeater, so it works. And it worked over a distance of approximately about 35 miles, which, hey, that's pretty impressive, right? So it is repeater capable and everything else. Like I said though, it's just my own personal preferences preclude me from saying that this is a good first radio for you. I would say spend the extra money and get the, user programmable one. If it's your first radio, if it's your second or your backup or whatever, then yeah, it's a great option for that, or the radio to throw it to the kid or to somebody else, but take that with a grain of salt, and be that as it may. I don't think that this has any worse quality build than anything else out there. I just feel like there are some limitations, like the antenna and the inability to change programming, that make it not something that I'm too preferred in telling someone that this is a great first radio for you or first choice. And honestly, as a stuff in my bag throwaway radio, well, when you have something else in the lineup, or an emergency or a stocking stuffer or a compact throw in the bag radio, honestly, this is a better option to me just because of the size. And they're both rated at 3 watts. I think if I was gonna have one to stick in the bottom of a bag somewhere, or keep as my stashed away radio, I'm gonna go with this one, just because of that size differential. This has the same rated battery, so standby time is gonna be the same. It's also not user programmable like this, but that form factor, and especially this is, yeah, a little more ruggedized, but it is not waterproof, neither is this. So I would go with the RB19 if I was looking at it from a standpoint of a small stash away emergency radio. I hope that helps. Sometimes it's hard to make. I mean, yeah, this is a good radio and we've used the hell out of it, especially like I said, as a loaner radio or as one to give to the kid, but I don't reach for it myself. I don't find myself going, I'm gonna take the RB26 and go on my hike today, because of some of the things that we've said, like the issues with the reception just not being as good with that shorty antenna and not being user changeable in my hand on the fly. It's not a radio that I reach for myself. It's a radio that I hand to someone else. Makes sense? If you liked this video and got something out of it, consider subscribing to the channel. As always, I'm Matt Kester. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Frugal Explorer Dad. Check out the channel at Secondhand Overland on Instagram and the Facebook. And our website, secondhandoverland.net, where you can pick up all of the latest, greatest merch and help support the channel. Till next time, be good.